fit and well in these terrible times. I think we're all doing the best we absolutely can and coping the best we can. But it's tough times for everyone, and we'll just have to do what we can. What I say about the agenda today is that it's business as usual, and we need to get as much of the capital programmes out the door, get as much spend done. We don't want any clawback. We want to make sure that we spend the money that we said we will, and it's going to be difficult to do that. But things are progressing, as you'll hear from Melanie as we go along. So can I just, as I say, I can't see everybody. So can we do a roll call? Perhaps someone else has joined in. Roger Marsh. I think Roger might be running late. Alex, are you here? No. Jane, you're here?
Yep. Morning.
Morning. Darren, you're here?
Morning.
Andrew's here?
Morning.
Kim Groves? No. And Melanie's obviously here, and the officers are all here. So we'll make a start. So we obviously got apologies for absence from Alex and Roger Marsh. And then we'll move on. Have anyone got any declarations of interest? Okay. Can I draw your attention to item 3, exclusion of press and public, etc. And then the minutes of the meeting on the 5th of March. I wasn't there, so can someone agree them? Anyone?
Chair, I was there and I can agree that they are a correct record of the meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And then, right, we'll go on to the capital programme update. Oh, I think Alex is here now. Are you okay, Alex?
Yeah.
We can't hear us. Oh, it's here.
I can,
fine.
I mute myself if I'm not speaking.
Okay, that's fine. Lovely. Okay, we'll go on to the capital programme update. Melanie.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Jeffrey. So this is our first meeting since the lockdown, and obviously the whole world has changed since that meeting. So we have set out in the report where we are just trying to ensure that our projects and programmes can continue as much in line with business as usual as possible. We've had a number of schemes on site that have either had to pause or have had to find alternative suppliers. So there's definitely been some issues with supply chain, with contractors not being able to get equipment on site, not being able to get tarmac, cement, aggregates. But in most cases, they found alternative supplies and they have been able to continue. So we've got some really good examples of schemes that are continuing on site. We've got Castleford rail station that is continuing with the new building and better access to the rail station for pedestrians. We've also got ELAW, which is the East Leeds orbital route, which is continuing on site, and they're okay in terms of supplies. They're also obviously all maintaining the social distancing requirements as well. We've got one scheme at Mythenroyd Park and Rail at the rail station where the car park is being provided, and work temporarily did pause, but they've restarted again this week because again they feel confident they can make things safe for staff and for workers on site. And then we've also got some great examples of work going on at our enterprise zones and at Gain Lane in Bradford. We've got a lot of work going on in terms of improvement to access and looking at the first buildings going up on the site as well, and they're looking at the pilings for those. So wherever possible, we're trying to progress with the schemes on site. There's been some problems and some challenges, but we're trying to push ahead with that. There is no doubt about it that it is going to affect the delivery of our programme. And we're probably looking at a 3-6 month delay, depending on how long some of the restrictions take to lift. we are definitely going to feel the effects. We've written to government to ask for some flexibility around both grant submission deadlines, but also programme deadlines. At the moment, we've been told on the grant submissions that we can have a bit of a relaxation on that, which is really helpful. So we still haven't concluded our Q4 claims and our spend for last year, and we're still waiting for some of those claims to come in. So we're working on that. We've also got schemes that are in development. We're continuing to press ahead with those. Wherever possible, we're working business cases. We're doing appraisal of schemes. So obviously there's still things that are coming through to yourselves for consideration. So yes, we have been affected, but we're trying to move ahead. In terms of the flexibility around the programmes, the message that we're getting from government is they want to do a review of where our projects are. And at the moment, it looks as if they are not minded to give us any extension to our programmes. So we do have to make sure that we're getting schemes into contracts and out onto delivery as well. So I'm not sure whether we will get any confirmation that there's going to be any flexibility on the delivery of the programmes.
Well, I would have hoped that there would have been some flexibility. I mean, everybody's in the same situation, and I would have thought that there would have been hope for. I think we should continue to press for some flexibility on that. But in the meantime, we get moving as quickly as we can with everything. Anyone want to come in? Okay, do you want to carry on, Melanie?
So I think Jane wants to come
Jane,
in. Yeah.
sorry, Jane.
Sorry, and I think Roger after me. I was just about to say, to agree with the chair that really it is unreasonable actually not to allow an extension, and we do need to keep pressing government on that. It is unrealistic. I was just interested to ask Melanie if any of the contractors who are working on these big capital schemes that we know of have actually gone bust. Because I'm very conscious in Calderdale, where we've been working on a sixth form college, we actually have new people turning up at the site asking to come and work there because their existing building contractor elsewhere has gone bust. So we've been the net beneficiaries, which has been good in terms of getting the scheme finished. But I just wondered if you were aware of any contractors and these major schemes that had actually gone into administration or gone bankrupt as a result, or have we been relatively lucky?
Can you answer that, Melanie?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Not at the moment. We're not aware of any on our existing schemes. There's a couple that had happened just before the lockdown, which again could be partly related to this. We haven't heard of any in terms of the major construction companies. And I guess at the moment, I mean, I know the housing construction sites, a number of those have closed down and staff have been furloughed. So hopefully with the furlough scheme being extended, that might allow a number of those jobs to be safeguarded for a little while longer.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Jane?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Might I come in, Chair?
Roger.
Good morning, everybody, and apologies for my late arrival. I'd like to ask Angela a question and then make a comment, which I think is pertinent to not only the programme we've got, but the funding that might become available for the completion of LGF. Angela, have we had anything formally yet on the allocation for 2021, which by now should have been in our bank account? And I'll make a comment in terms of some of what I'm picking up, which may or may not be relevant to our thinking about what else we might be able to complete, let alone fund, to the end of the programme over whatever timescale that is. Angela.
Okay, the simple answer is we have not yet had any formal notification of this year's allocation or when it will be paid. I have been chasing that. I emailed yesterday, and Bays are going to call me this afternoon, hopefully with an update. But at the moment, there is nothing in writing, nothing formal.
Thank you. Okay. the comment I wanted to make, because I guess that might be the case, Angela, so thank you for confirming that to colleagues, is right. It's absolutely right what Melanie says. We need to keep pushing. We need to make sure people understand these are part of an integrated set of interventions that affect the heart of our strategic economic plan and local industrial strategy, which will hopefully become the recovery strategy for the region. But we also, I think, need to be mindful, perhaps, and maybe take this offline, as to what might happen, recognising the bigger fiscal position the country is facing from the end of this quarter, if for the short term or otherwise there was a revisitation of the allocation for this year at the beginning or subsequently. Because you may recall that the Chancellor announced a further £387 million for local growth fund 21-22, when actually we are in the last year of the initial 6-year programme. So I guess it's perhaps just to make that comment, not necessarily for any response, Melanie and colleagues, but for us to be thinking slightly further ahead as to what might we have to reshape as part of our recovery and reimagining thinking. I just wanted to share that, Chair. I know it's perhaps not something that has an answer now, but at least put on the radar of colleagues across the Investment Committee, that aspect, because it may end up being done to us, not done by us or for us in terms of the fiscal position. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, I know. I think that's important, Roger, and I think that would be part of the recovery plan and the recovery board that you and I are on. I think that's something that we should think about.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Anyone else want to come in?
I think Councillor Waller wanted to come in, actually.
Yes. Yes, Councillor Waller.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I concur with the previous comments that I think we've got to do as much as we can to keep the impetus on economic activity where it is safe to do so. I know as a local authority, we're just reviewing all of our projects that are on pause to look at those that could be brought forward to assist local businesses, to give them a pipeline. So I think in terms of making the case to government that they need to be more flexible to enable us to respond and provide the impetus, I think that's important. But also with some of the changes of heart about encouraging cycling and to fit in with this new positive thinking, and that would therefore require government to be more flexible about some of those changes, but that's more in keeping with the new normal. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Perhaps you could help us with some lobbying with the government. Might be useful. Thank you. Anyone else want to come in? Okay, can we move on, Melanie? Have you anything else on this item?
No, that's fine on that one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we go on to item 6, Transforming Cities Fund. Do you want to kick off with that then?
Yeah, so on this one, we've got a proposal here at programme level to release some funding for the development and the setup of the programme. Individual strategic cases and outline business cases will still come forward to yourselves as investment committee for consideration, but we've brought here a programme paper, and I'm going to ask Fiona Lim, one of my colleagues, to just take you through the highlights of the report.
Thank you, Melanie. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Fiona.
Thanks. So as Melanie's updated, the purpose of the report is to provide you with an overarching update on the Transforming Cities programme, which is a new programme for the Combined Authority, and also to recommend to the Combined Authority the release of a series of funding releases for firstly to kind of recoup some costs already incurred by ourselves and partners up to this point, but also to facilitate further development work. and to also put in place the programme management structures that we will need to take this forward for delivery within the very constrained timescales that DfT have given us. So just to kind of give you a brief overview of the overarching programme business case, the Transforming Cities Fund forms the next major programme of transport interventions in our city region, and we see it as critical as we continue to plan for the economic recovery and growth across the region, particularly obviously in current climate. The programme is made up of 22 packages of schemes that cover both West Yorkshire but also North Yorkshire. The development of this programme predated the changes to the city region geography, and DfT recognised that we could continue to engage with North Yorkshire on delivery of these schemes. It's a mix of public transport, cycling and walking infrastructure, and it also it builds on the work that we're already delivering through our existing programmes, the Transport Fund and the Leeds Public Transport Investment Programme. In terms of the outputs expected, it will deliver 2 new bus park and rides, and bus priority along 6 major corridors, and this is aligned to our inclusive growth corridors work, and the development of the schemes today has kind of come out of that programme of activity. It will transform our towns and our city centres for walking and cycling, and also changes to bus movements within those towns and cities, and provide enhanced waiting environments for bus users at Heckman White, Cleckheaton, Bradford Interchange, Glasshouten and Dewsbury and Huddersfield. It provides significant improvements to walking and cycling infrastructure, delivering high quality segregated routes, again building on the work of our existing programmes, City Connect and the Leeds Public Transport Investment Programme, that step change in cycling infrastructure. And we'll also deliver a new White Rose rail station in the high scenario. In terms of the outcomes, we expect to obviously improve public transport and active travel options for 1.5 million people across the region, and facilitate car trips to be taken off our roads, which will in turn reduce CO2 emissions and improve air quality. Prior to the current situation, we forecast that it would increase bus trips by 6% and rail trips by 4%. Obviously, there will need to be further work done to understand the impact of the programme. Now we're in a very different situation, but that work is being initiated. And it also promotes and supports connectivity to housing sites and employment sites. The programme is focused around transforming access from areas of persistent poverty and communities that have that suffer with that, and creating smart and clean and livable places, focusing on our towns and city centres. So in terms of the funding award, through the budget announcement in March, we received £317 million from the DfT to deliver against our low scenario. The initial programme business case that was put to DfT covered 3 different scenarios, a low, core and a high. However, the feedback from our leaders is that we have an ambition within West Yorkshire to deliver and prioritise investments up to the high level, and we're working through the development of a funding strategy to enable that. We have been using the last few months to establish the programme and set up our governance and reporting arrangements, and that's aligned to the assurance framework and our existing governance and reporting processes. Something I want to highlight is that the DfT has been quite specific about certain quality aspects with regards to, in particular, the cycling and walking infrastructure. So we're just looking at how we can ensure that that is kind of brought through in the schemes, and that we have that kind of checks and balances to make sure that the infrastructure that's being brought forward does meet those standards. And that might include, for example, engaging with the transport committees, thematic subgroups and other wider stakeholder groups. We have been continuing to develop the programme prior to the funding announcement, but also since the funding announcement and up to date. And it's just worth reflecting on the fact that some of the Transforming Cities schemes will take the form of enhancements and additional scope to existing Transport Fund and public transport, Leeds Public Transport Investment Programme projects. So therefore they may have already had an element of development work done, and you'll start to see some business cases coming forward quite quickly that will have TCF funding attached to them. But for those new schemes, work has been continuing to develop the early business cases, the first stage of the assurance process. So all 22 packages of schemes have already approved the first decision point, and so far 8 of the 22 packages have submitted their strategic outline business cases for approval, and one of those you'll see in the next item. And a couple have already actually started to submit their outline business cases. So there's been a significant amount of work done today at risk, and we need to now kind of start to get the funding flowing through so that our partners can recoup those costs and we can continue to develop these schemes at pace. Appendix A provides a summary of all the packages and schemes, and provides a breakdown of their current progress against the key milestones, and also the funding requests for the next set of milestones. So with that in mind, and given the constrained delivery timeframe by March 2023, it's recommended that we approve a further programme level tranche of development funding, so that the partners can continue to develop the schemes at pace. And we have worked with our partners to procure a strategic development partner for the programme, so that's providing additional resource and support to progress the schemes, and it's likely that we will do a similar exercise going forward, and that provides both efficiencies in resource and kind of that consistent approach to project development, which is really beneficial. Historically, the Combined Authority approved £3 million worth of Transport Fund funding to kind of kickstart the programme. We're requesting that is now paid back through the Transforming Cities allocation. So there's a recommendation to approve up to £3 million. So reflecting the fact that we are delivering against the low scenario and given the times, but we have an ambition to fund up to the high scenario, we're suggesting that the programme needs to deliver at pace by March 2023. We're suggesting that we should take an over-programming approach and continue to develop all schemes in the high scenario up to the point of outline business case and make a decision on the funding at that point. And we should have developed the wider funding strategy to support that as these come through at outline business case. So to enable that prioritisation and progression, we have a mechanism in place to kind of benchmark the projects and provide a general kind of programme health check that looks at what the key risks are and where we should be focusing our energy going forward. As I mentioned, we have done significant work to understand the levels of resource required to manage the programme as a programme, and therefore there has been a resource mapping and resource planning exercise done, and we propose that the funding to enable that to be implemented is approved. And equally, we will be taking on the overarching responsibility to evaluate the programme going forward, and we recommend that the benefits realisation and monitoring evaluation budget is also approved at this time. And I think that kind of covers it off. Thank you. I thought I'd go into a little bit more detail because this is a new programme and you've not seen this one before.
No, I think, Fiona, you've covered it marvellously, very comprehensive, and you haven't left anything out. It was very good. Anybody want to comment before we move to the recommendation? Any questions? No, everybody happy?
I think there's Roger and
my problem is, Melanie, it's not showing up on my machine who wants to speak, so people are going to have to call out. Roger, are you wanting to come in?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Waller.
Just to make a question, but also a couple of questions. Fiona, can you just remind me, I know others maybe remember, what the gap between the low level of funding, the 317, and the high end? And my second question is, other than the White Rose railway station, which was in the high end from, I think, what you've just said, are there any other projects that are in the high end that are in the package of 22 I set out in Appendix 1 of the paper? And then the next question, maybe it's not for now but for later, in terms of funding the gap between those two, are we planning to do it on the same time frame, i.e. to 2023, or a longer time frame? And that may be, Chair, a question for later, but it would be interesting just to, in the context of understanding this new programme, as Fiona very eloquently shared with us, and thank you for that, Fiona. So three sort of questions interrelated.
So the gap is roughly about 140 million. We requested, I think it was 480 million, but that did include some aspects that we know won't form part of the programme, such as Queensbury Tunnel and some mass transit preparation work, which can be funded elsewhere. So I think it's in the region of about 140 million, but I can double check that and get a figure for the minutes. The second question about those schemes that are not funded in the low scenario. So yeah, obviously White Rose currently isn't funded in the low scenario. There are enhancements to, I think you have to put me on the spot here, there's enhancements to the Elland rail station access package that isn't funded in the low. There's one of the corridors in Kirklees that isn't funded in the low. There was a kind of carbon mitigation package that wasn't funded in the low as well, but we may want to look at kind of utilising some of the top-up money. So there's £25 million top-up money that we do have that needs to be allocated across the programme. There was the scheme in Brighouse wasn't funded in the low. I think that may be it, but again, I can check and get the answer for the minutes. The final question around, do we expect to deliver in the same timescales? I think that's, again, something probably for later. It'll be a mix of, for those schemes that we might want to top up from the low to the high that have got some funding allocated in the low, we may want to bring those forward sooner with the additional funding. But for those that are wholly unfunded, we may want to look at different timescales. So it's very much a kind of different individual case-by-case basis as to when and how we would want to bring that additional funding forward.
So just to be clear, the initial focus is on that set of 22, whether they were in the low, medium or high, in terms of how we envisioned them. This is where we are as a snapshot. That's the 22 we're going to proceed with, against which you're looking for the authority to make those further allocations to support the development of those programmes.
Yeah,
that's really helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. It's just, firstly, I think the comments that Fiona raised about the quality aspects of cycling and walking, I think it'd be useful to have a note about that, because it is something that will be very much in the minds of people reviewing city centre usage. And it was just, I think we need to factor in the post-COVID landscape, that certainly in terms of how people are using city centres, this has accelerated a lot of the changes that were going on in the high street anyway. But I think we need to demonstrate that we've factored that in to this programme. I realise that this is very early days, but also featuring other aspects like we've all tested our broadband capacities recently, and whether that investment as a means of dealing with transport and avoidable journeys, that might be factored into a future report. Thanks, Chair.
Can I just make a comment on the first point? We are testing with partners the proposition of utilising some of this development funding to implement some kind of temporary works, as people are already doing, on those corridors and in those places that will become more permanent schemes as the programme develops and goes into delivery, by ways of kind of strengthening the business cases, but also kind of providing that kind of input on stakeholder acceptability and public acceptability of some of these schemes. So that is something that we propose to do in the short term.
Thanks, Fiona. Anybody else wanting to come in?
Chair, can I just pick up a couple of points? I think in terms of the difference between the low scenario and the high, where there's a political desire to fund those schemes that are included in the high, this is by the West Yorkshire leaders. And so the difference between the low and the high will be West Yorkshire schemes where we're looking at alternative sources of funding. I think there would need to be a different, there's a different situation for York and North Yorkshire schemes where they would have to look at whether they could fund the gap between a low and a high scenario. But certainly those that are in the low, the DfT have confirmed that they would like to see all of the low scenario schemes delivered across West and North Yorkshire by March 23. So it comes into play in terms of the priorities, that if there are other schemes that we're funding differently and they're not reliant upon that low scenario TCF award, then maybe we should be looking at programming them a little bit later. And also, as a combined authority, we're looking at a funding strategy for how we can fund those schemes across West Yorkshire. I don't know if, Angela, you want to come in on that one.
Thanks, Melanie. You're right, we're in an interesting situation here as we're approaching a mayoral combined authority next year. We know there are other pots of funding in the future. We know we have gain share. What we are clear is we need to set up the processes by which we can decide what our priorities are and how we allocate the funding. So I think realistically, it's going to be very challenging to deliver the full programme in the timescales. But there certainly is some opportunity to explore the opportunities for funding as we move forward. But it will have to we'll have to find a way to prioritise it within all the other asks that are coming forward. But there will be a process to do that. We do need to do that as part of our preparations for being there already next year. And we'll continue to look out for any opportunities to bid for funding if the opportunity comes along.
Denise, could I just, sorry, based on what Melanie's just said and Angela, I just want to be clear and hopefully helpful in this, that before we approve the further development expenditure, at this point in time, we envision that all of those schemes will go forward and go ahead through the various stages, because what I'm sort of slightly nervous about is setting off spending money and then reprioritizing later and then leaving people disappointed, in circumstances where disappointed, perhaps not the right word, but perhaps frustrated, in circumstances where we're having to think about that larger fiscal position facing the whole country, let alone just our bit of it. And I just wanted to get a degree of reassurance from Melanie / Angela, and I'm not familiar with the detail of this programme, so forgive me, and maybe that's part of my hesitation, that the intention as we speak today is that these will flow through, subject to obviously the various steps of checking the business case development.
Yeah, Chair, if I can just come back on that. Yeah, basically, we're suggesting at this stage that all of the schemes that are West Yorkshire schemes can consider a range of options and bring that forward at OBC, including their high scenario, so that we will consider all of that up to OBC stage, and then we will have to look at which funding sources are most appropriate to be able to progress with these schemes. So that is the message that we're giving officers at the moment. And we've learnt from the LIPTIP programme, so the Leeds Public Transport Investment Programme, where basically they have tried to bring forward all of their packages, certainly to OBC, and it's meant that by bringing them all forward, we have some schemes that are oven ready, if you like, so that if there are other funding opportunities out there with possibly, you know, other things through DFT, that we've got schemes that are ready to go and we can look at other sources.
Thank you, Melanie. That's helpful. I think Kim might have wanted to come in, Denise, I think.
Yes, okay. Kim.
Off mute, Kim. Still on mute. How do we unmute Kim? Can I unmute?
Yeah, you're still muted. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I think I'm coming through now. I've had a few technical issues this morning. I think Melanie covered my point in terms of learning from LIPTIP. It's crucial that we have those schemes ready. It's difficult in the timescales that we've got. There's some fantastic schemes in there, and funding bids keep coming forward. And obviously, we've got White Rose Station in there. And just recently, the government announced the new station funding. So we've really got to put what we've got ready forward, and it may be that we do have to swap seeds around. But I think in terms of acceleration and job creation, this is a fantastic opportunity for us across West Yorkshire. It will be challenging at 370 million plus 25 million in that time scale. And I think it's how we look at different processes and make sure that our procurement system is working to include those small and medium companies, to make sure that we have got the capacity to deliver these schemes. But really pleased to see them all progressing out to districts.
Okay, anyone else? No, I think what everybody said is right, and we do need to have the schemes ready. We need to get as much investment as we can into our areas, and it's important that we show that the government that we are ready and we have got schemes ready, and we've got a very good track record of delivery. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tougher times than we've had before, and it's so unfortunate for everyone this has happened. With the investment, it's terrible for what's happened to people, but it's really put our programmes in a bad way, really. So what we have to do is move forward, do the absolute best that we can with what we've got. And I think that with the officers that we've got and the teams that we've got and the impetus that we have, I think we can move forward. So if no one else wants to say anything, can we agree the recommendation on item 7?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. We go on to item 7, the capital spending project approvals. And I think the first person, I think we're back to Fiona for this one, for the active travel.
Yep.
You're on a roll today.
I am. I'm done after this. Yeah. So this is the Active and Sustainable Travel in Leeds City Centre scheme, which is the first of the TCF schemes to start to come through the assurance framework. I won't give you the background as to what TCF is, because you've just heard all that before, but I'll kind of go into a little bit of detail around this particular scheme. It's essentially formed of two distinct proposals. There is the Bishopsgate scheme, and its kind of feeder routes into the station frontage, essentially, and then a separate package of kind of network enhancements across Leeds City Centre, cycle network enhancements, that is. So just in terms of the key components of the scheme, it will provide pedestrianisation of New Street station at the front of the station, development of a transport interchange, a redesign of the station entrance, which will connect through to Bishopsgate, providing a much enhanced pedestrian environment in the front of the station, improved lifts, providing accessibility improvements, and a 700 space cycle hub that will obviously replace the current cycle hub that's there, and will be much more kind of visible and accessible to the wider public. So it won't just be for the station itself. The idea is that it will be for cycle parking for the wider city centre in those offices and locations that don't have their own cycle storage. So in terms of how it will impact, it obviously will reduce the number of vehicles entering the city centre, reducing emissions and particularly improving air quality. This location is one of the worst air quality black spots, I think, in the country. So reducing that traffic from Dark Neville Street and Neville Street will vastly improve that. It will reduce journey times and improve accessibility for pedestrians and cyclists accessing the rail station and the wider city centre, improve to disabled access and obviously improve safety and provide that interchange. This is the largest package within the TCF programme at 39.5 million, which is good that it's the first to come forward. They're already well progressed with their development work, but there are some key risks to note around securing planning consent. It's a complex project. There's a number of agreements and land they need to secure, and obviously get approvals with Network Rail. And then there is a kind of we need to do some further work on the impact of basically essentially closing a number of streets to general traffic in the city centre. The recommendation is that this scheme is progressed to approval at decision point 2, and that there's an indicative approval for the £39.5 million from the Transforming Cities programme. In terms of the assessment, it provides a strong fit to our strategic drivers and also the objectives of the TCF programme. There's been some early economic appraisal work done, and when you look at the split between the two schemes, primarily because the Bishopsgate scheme is looking at kind of enhancing place, in pure web tag terms, it doesn't prevent particularly good value for money, but the team are working on providing a more robust appraisal, and will take into much wider consideration of those economic impacts of that creation of a place and a new sense of arrival and the access improvements to the station. I think that's all I need to say on that one.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Chair, not so much a question as a not so much a question as a comment, which is that given our earlier discussion on the previous paper, I think it's important that this keeps moving forward through the different stages at some pace, really. That was all. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right, Jane. Anyone else? As I say, I'm sorry I can't see who's indicating, so if anybody can...
No, it's fine.
No.
Alex, are you wanting to come in?
I was saying no, it's fine, but I'll just stay muted from now on.
Anyone else? Kim, are you wanting to come in?
Just really quickly to say that any schemes like this, you know, we really need to work together in terms of disruption and displacement. So I know the scheme is progressing, and we are having regular meetings. It's a really good scheme, but we'll need an awful lot of planning because of the disruption to the city centre. So really a plea that, you know, to work with us at the Combined Authority and make sure that operators are involved in all those types of conversations once the schemes get further down the line from a public transport point of view.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in? So can we agree that then? And then we've got the East Leeds, and I think that's thank you, Andrew. I think that's Kate Gifford who's going to take us through the next one.
Yeah, hi. Is it helpful if I give a brief overview of the scheme first of all?
Yes, please. Yes.
So the East Leeds Demand Responsive Transport Scheme is really looking to use a flexible sort of more responsive bus service, which will be using much smaller vehicles. And people will be able to book this service either through an app or over the phone. And it's really trying to address poor connectivity in two areas of East Leeds. So the East End Park area and on the East Leeds development site. And the scheme will link really well into both the core bus routes and also rail station, particularly at cross gates. In terms of the impact of the scheme, the key aims of the scheme are really to improve access to employment opportunities and healthcare for people who don't currently have very good public transport access in those areas. And we're also hoping to improve access to essential services, for example, supermarkets. And really the overall objective of this is to reduce people's reliance on car and reduce the amount of people who actually need to own a car in those areas. Does anyone have any questions on the scheme as a whole, or do you want me to carry on and talk about the costs?
I think carry on, Kate.
Okay. So the total cost of the scheme is 2.234 million, and the cost to the combined authority is 1.466 million. We're not actually asking for any funding to be released at this point, but we are asking for the approval for the outline business case and for the ability to progress to full business case plus costs. And also a recommendation for the combined authority to approve the scheme as well.
Anybody? Anybody indicating, Darren?
Can we just approve this one? It seems a very good scheme that we should be getting behind.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. I'm sorry it is a bit confusing, but people's pictures keep popping up, but I can't tell whether you're wanting to speak or not. Sorry, it's a bit haphazard today. Anybody else want to speak, or shall we just agree the scheme? I think we'll agree the scheme. Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Thanks very much.
Then the other one is the Castleford Greenway, and it's Robert Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning.
Hi, Robert.
Hi. The Castleford Greenway scheme is part of the City Connect Phase 3 programme, which seeks to encourage an uptake in cycling and walking as the natural choice for short journeys and or part of a longer journey. So the Phase 4 element of the Wakefield Greenway scheme will deliver a new 1.3 kilometre off-road pathway linking previously delivered City Connect phases of the Castleford to Wakefield Greenway to the Trans-Pennine Trail, which will fill a gap in the local cycle network in the Methley area. So the scheme will provide improved journey quality for cyclists by creating a more direct and traffic-free cycle route for long and short journeys between Leeds, Wakefield and Castleford. It will encourage inclusive growth and better quality of life by encouraging an uptake of cycling and walking that will encourage a move from travelling by car to cycling for a range of journey purposes, thereby delivering environmental benefits by reducing traffic congestion, carbon emissions and improving air quality, which all contributes to the Leeds City Region climate emergency commitments. It will provide health and wellbeing benefits for users and surrounding people, and it will enhance connectivity and improve access to the employment, skills and education for low income and vulnerable groups via a low cost, sustainable travel mode. The total forecast scheme cost is £371,686, and the combined authority is to fund the full £371,686 from the West Yorkshire Plus Transport Fund, and it is affordable from within the City Connect Phase 3 budget. So the recommendation is that the project proceeds through decision point 4 and work commences on activity 5, and that an indicative approval to the total project value of £371,686 is given from the West Yorkshire Transport Plus Fund, with full approval to spend being granted once the scheme has progressed through the assurance process to decision point 5.
Okay, thanks very much. Any comments? Are we all happy with the scheme?
Yes, happy. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes,
with
happy.
that, thank you very much. Well, that's the end of the agenda, and we've got through it. And I have to admit, this was my first time on Zoom. I haven't quite mastered it, but I'm sure I'll get there eventually. So thanks very much, everybody, and keep safe. And thank you to the officers for all that you've done, and thank you, Melanie, for sorting me out with all the information. It's been really beneficial. Thanks very much, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks very
Councillor
much.
Jeffrey.
Well done, Chair.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.